Hi, everybody. So today I am going to be talking about the executive functioning skill of metacognition. I know if you are a colleague of mine, over the last couple of years, we've done a lot of discussion about the whole umbrella of executive functioning skills, what they are, and what it means to work on them to help students be successful. However, I really tried to take a step back, and I realized in reflecting on a lot of the conversations, a lot of the professional development that's already happened, it really hit me that metacognition is truly the root of all of it. In order for students to be successful in different areas of executive functioning, they really have to have a strong foundation in metacognitive thinking because it really is the basis or the root of all of those other skills. In order to progress in those other areas, they need to be able to use this type of thinking and develop these types of skills. So I felt like it was really important to dial it way back. This whole presentation is focused around the idea of metacognition, what it means, how to teach it, and different ways to incorporate it into your classroom, really, regardless of what setting you're in. So, if you are a colleague of mine that's been to one of my professional development workshops or had a conversation with me, we're going to take a few steps back and really take a deeper dive in this area. If you are brand new and you're just coming into the world of executive functioning and trying to figure it all out, you've come to the right starting point. So I hope in general everybody gets a nice chunk out of today. So I'm going to, this is the agenda if you were in the workshop doing some check-ins. What are executive functioning skills, metacognition, what is it and why is it so important? How can we incorporate metacognition into our daily routines? A little fun site that I've used over the years that's a really good self-monitoring tool for classrooms, and then Q&A. If you are watching this video and obviously not with me at the time, the Q&A, you can always reach out to me at any time. Shoot me an email with whatever questions you might have. So to get started, this is the executive functioning umbrella that I always talk about. Any workshop that I'm doing executive functioning, any workshop that I'm doing any kind of conversation or work with executive functioning, I always kick off with this picture just to give everybody a reminder of what the skills are that we're talking about. So you have your response inhibition, your working memory, your emotional control, your sustained attention, task initiation, planning and prioritizing, organization, time management, goal-directed persistence, flexibility and shifting focus, and then, of course, metacognition. The best way that I explain executive functioning skills, especially when I'm working with students, is they are the wheels that keep us turning. As we grow into adolescence and young adults, the idea is that our executive functioning skills will also grow and mature and help us accomplish tasks. Every task that you complete in a day is in some way, shape, or form related to one or more executive functioning skills. Now, not everybody's executive functioning grows at the same rate. There are people, regardless of classification, disability, functioning level, that may have weaker executive functioning areas. Myself, for example, I struggle with time management. That is something that I have worked on forever and I'm still continuing to work on it. And if it's really funny, I always ask people to pause a moment and look at this image and ask yourself, is there one executive functioning skill that you can say right off the bat is an area of weakness for you? We definitely have those times, though, as I've said before, where executive functioning skills for some are weaker and definitely require more explicit attention and instruction. And that's where all of this work comes in. So again, if you're not with me or weren't with me in the presentation and you're just watching this video, obviously you're not doing the physical check-in, but ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable are you with your knowledge of executive functioning skills just based on that image you just saw? And then also too, on a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable are you integrating executive functioning skills instruction into your day? Obviously, if you're doing this video, you wouldn't be able to place a post-it anywhere, but just ask yourself those questions. thinking about what setting you're in, what groups of students you work with, whether it's small group, large group, different abilities. Ask yourself how comfortable you are in both of these areas. Having that mindset and that thinking will really be a nice springboard into today. So, when we start to take that deep dive into metacognition, you might be asking yourself, what is it? So, metacognition is the process of thinking about one's own thinking and learning. The way I explain it to people is just really thinking about thinking. It's being aware of the patterns behind your thought process, awareness of your own knowledge or your knowledge on a topic. It involves a lot of self reflection, the current status of where you are in regards to a topic, how comfortable you feel with the topic, how much more you think you need to learn about a topic, what your problem areas might be, future goals, strategies, the results if you complete a task or an activity, really taking that time to reflect on the results or the outcomes and what they mean. It really is, as I said before, in order for students to be successful in the areas or the other areas of executive functioning, this area has to grow first. And it is really important for students to know what it is and what it means. So I always give the example of, emotional regulation. How many times we're asking people, how can I help you calm down? Or what do you need to calm down right now? Well, they really need a base in metacognition first. They need to have that knowledge of the fact that they're upset, why they're upset, what's upsetting them, what strategies have been helpful for them in the past. So, this is why it's so important to start here. So, when I typically introduce metacognition to classes or students, I always like to start with their strengths and challenges and then their learning styles. So, I had incorporated a SMARTS activity for anybody that attended the workshop. The SMARTS Executive Functioning Program does have a kickoff activity in their metacognitive unit where children are encouraged to look at the strengths and challenges of a character to understand how that character in a movie or a book used and played upon their own strengths and challenges. And then children themselves are asked to identify their own strengths and challenges. And it really is specific that we choose the word challenge because when something is a challenge, you want to overcome it. So it's that idea behind it that something may be challenging for you, but we're going to figure out how we work with it. And the reason that this is such a great springboard for this is again, when we're expecting children or people in general to think metacognitively, they need to be aware of what truly works for them and what doesn't so that they can choose methods of assignments that are appropriate for them. They could, you go into those other areas, they can, choose effective goals when they're thinking about time management. If they know that a strength of theirs is working in time constraints, they know, okay, I'm going to work best when I have time parameters. If something is a challenge for them, such as working in an area where there's some noise and they get distracted, they know that they need to be able to think metacognitively and choose appropriate places or fidgets or seating or partners to work with in order to get their work done. So it's really important if we're expecting that metacognitive thinking to happen, that students become truly aware of themselves. Similar to learning styles, there are tons of learning style surveys that you can access, online and in different books. And again, having someone recognize what their best learning style is, whether they're a visual learner, an auditory learner, a tactile learner, that's going to help them when they are thinking metacognitively, make those great decisions and be effective and successful in the long run, because that's what all of this is. We want to make sure that we're tapping into executive functioning skills and honing them in a way where people feel successful. So, and again, I know I just did a lot of conversation on why it's so important, but these are just some key phrases to keep in mind. Students really need to be encouraged to think about how they learn best. It encourages independence and application, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a bit. Strengthens self awareness. It primes students' brains when they're going into an activity, and we can prime their brains to think metacognitively. They're going to be better able to apply critical thinking skills and really put themselves in a position where they can connect connect to what they're learning. And again, it's the root of every other executive functioning skill. So, some examples for how we can help students start to think metacognitively once we've kind of laid the groundwork about what it is. Some pre questions to lessons and activities include asking students, what materials do I need for this activity? So we're very often used to telling students or telling our own children what they need to get to the next activity or to start a new task. Asking that open-ended question of, what materials do I need or do you need? It causes them to think for themselves, think about what activity they're about to start, what subject area, what sport, whatever it is, and use their own prior knowledge to think about what would make sense. Where is the best place for me to work to be successful? What do I already know about this topic? What tools do I need? Is there anything about this task that might be hard for me? What strategies should I prepare to help myself? Now, it's not the expectation that you jump right in, always asking the students these open ended questions. You might need to do some pre teaching, have some pre experiences, especially for the materials and the tools. If you're earlier on in the year, you may start off that year with a checklist or a list on the board as to what students might need. And then as the year goes on and students go into the routine, they're going to be able to think back to their own experiences. The tools and the strategies as students are going along, you want to provide them with those tools and strategies and teach them how to use them, but then have that reflection. So if you used a calculator, if you used a visual chart, well, was it successful? Yes. Okay. How was it successful? Is this a tool I want to use again? And then when they go into the next lesson the next day, okay, what tools or strategies do you think you might need today? So having that conversation that builds off of built-in reflection. The best place to be successful. It really is so important to have those conversations with students about, okay, so we just did this small group activity. Did you complete your work? Did you get your jobs done? Yes. Okay. What helped you? What do you think helped you get your job done? Or no, okay, what do you think might have gotten in your way? And then having those conversations the next day. So we're going back into small group, we're going back into this activity based on what we learned yesterday. What might you change today, or what might you continue to do yesterday because you know it was successful? And then your post, that really ties in a lot to those post reflection questions. If you take a look at them, a lot of them I already mentioned. There's some about how the activity made you feel. Did you meet all expectations? A lot of times we have those conversations where we say, are you done? Okay, turn your work in. Or when your work's done, put it in the bin or put it in the basket or put it on my desk. We really want to try to incorporate those questions of, did you really get the job done? Did you meet all expectations? And how do you know? That causes that critical thinking, that causes kids to pause a minute and use their metacognitive skills to think, okay, well, what were the jobs? What was incorporated? Let me look back. Is there a checklist? Can I do a mental checklist? Let me make sure that I'm really all done. And then also, which is so important, bringing their attention to how much time, and then what is one improvement that you notice. The time is really important. Again, that is a metacognitively based open-ended question, but it also ties to that executive functioning skill of time management. So that's how the two are connected. Students will start to get a sense of, well, this took me about 20 minutes. If you have students that are not great with telling time or haven't learned telling time, you might have them answer you with, well, it took me a long time or a little bit of time. You then provide them with, yeah, it took you about 2 minutes or it took you about 10 minutes, because that starts to build the bridges for those time management skills that kids are going to need as they grow up. And then the improvement, we always want to bring students' attention to the improvements that they're making. What's so important, though, is that we're not always telling them what their improvements are. It's so quick for so many of us to make those compliments and say, I love that you got your work done at a great pace today, or I love how much detail you added to your writing. And not that that's wrong and that we never want to do it, but we want to try to be open-ended as well, causing them to think about an improvement that they noticed, because the more improvements they notice, the more conversation. Well, where did that improvement come from? Or you must really be connecting to the lessons that we're doing. What do you think is helping you connect? Do you think you can apply this to the future? It's only going to strengthen their learning. So this is really, I when I first started really incorporating metacognitive skills into my own teaching, I kind of had this as a printed guide for myself until I got more comfortable weaving them into the day naturally. So before, I had mentioned that we don't always want to tell students what they need or what they're doing or what they need to fix. That's where the coach and ask, not telling piece comes in. We don't want to tell students that they have to become metacognitive thinkers or better metacognitive thinkers. And we don't want to have them fall into the trap of someone always telling them what they need to do, fix, or add. We want to coach them so that they can become metacognitive thinkers on their own. So you've heard me say a ton throughout this presentation so far, open-ended and critical questioning, inquiring about their opinions. You can mention things that you noticed if you feel like you need to, if the students don't seem to be noticing them on their own, but you want to assist them in making the connection. So if you notice that a student made a great improvement or moved their seat or, took out a calculator, you want to assist them in that connection of how did that help you? What did that do for your work output or your job completion? And then encouraging the use of the strategies that they know will be successful. So, really, what this comes down to, and my hope is that a lot of you who were either with me in the presentation or who are watching this video now, you might realize that you're already doing a lot of these things. But if you're not, I'm hoping that you're noticing some phrases that you might use day to day that really only require a little bit of shifting. That will really quickly help you with that turnaround to incorporating that metacognitive teaching and thinking into your room. So, here are just some examples of things that you may already be saying, but you can just make that simple shift. So, again, instead of saying you need your notebook and your calculator, shift it to what do you need for this math lesson? Your words are making me feel uncomfortable. Shift to how do you think those words are making me feel? You're getting no work done and you're getting distracted. Shift it to how do you think you're doing? I'm noticing you're not getting a lot of work done. What do you think is distracting you? You could also put there, do you think there are any distractors? Why don't you go sit at the back table? Shift to where in the room could you sit that will help you be most productive? You're missing questions 2 and 3. Shift to, have you finished the task? How do you know when you're done? Look at the board, shifts to, where can you look to see the expectations? Helping students just become more aware of their environments, their surroundings, their learning, their thinking. Another piece, too, that I'm actually thinking of as I'm sitting here going through this with you, so many times I have worked with people or heard people say, I'm providing these strategies and it's just not clicking. The students are just not using them. Applying these strategies in a more metacognitive way and giving the students the power and that control even to think for themselves and make those connections or those choices, that's how you're going to get more of the buy-in. That question or that statement right there, why don't you go sit at the back table? If we're telling students where they need to work, that's kind of where we're cutting off that independence piece, and you may get some of that pushback because students are viewing it as, I'm being told I have to go sit here, and sometimes that's when those walls go up and they're not connecting because they don't really understand why they're having to sit at the back table. They just know their teacher's telling them, they're getting distracted, and then they have to go. If we make it more of that metacognitive conversation, well, you're not getting your work done. What's happening here? Are there distractors? Oh, okay, there are. Well, where do you think you can work? Where it might be better for you. You might get some more productivity. Making them a collaborator in these discussions is not only going to strengthen their skills, but you're going to get them more on board because they're not just being told what they have to do or how they should be thinking or what's not happening. Now, the question I always get on the tail end of that is, okay, Marissa, but what if they just say they don't know? Or what happens when they give responses that aren't feasible? So that idea too, okay, where do you think you could work? And the child says, well, I'm going to go sit in the front of the room where there's already 6 other kids, and you could spot 2 kids right off the bat that were going to be just as much of a distractor as the distractors that were over by the original student's desk. So what do we do when students give responses that aren't feasible, or they just look at you and say, I don't know? What do we do? So you can start off by telling them, or making suggestions as a way to educate them. We just want to be careful with it because eventually the goal is to move away from this as much as we can. So if you say to a child, "Where do you think you could sit?" you know, to help yourself get your work done, and they say, "I don't know," or if they say, "I want to go in the front of the room," you can say to them, "Well, I think a good idea might be if you use that back table. Would you like to try it today to see if it helps?" That is really important. If you do that, it's really important to check in with that student at some point before the end of the day when that happens, to ask them how they think working at the back table went, because that's then going to give them another tool in their toolbox. If they say to you, "I want to go sit in the front of the room," and you could kind of tell that that's not going to be a good idea, you can be honest and say, "Well, I noticed that there's a lot of friends already working up there. I feel like that might be another spot where you could get distracted. Could you think of another spot?" If you have the flexibility or time or wiggle room and you want to kind of let them just go for it and let them sit up there and see how they do, and it doesn't work, you can then have that reflective conversation. "Okay, we went to the front of the room. There were about five or six other friends there, and we still didn't get work done. Do you feel like that moving up there worked for you?" So again, you're not telling the kid, "No, you're not going up there. No, there's too many people. No, you're still not getting your work done." It's becoming a collaborative conversation. This is going to slowly switch you to the coaching and open-ended phase. And again, if you can let them try and let them see if it works and it doesn't, then it's just another level of awareness that, okay, we thought this might work and it didn't. So now what do we do? So again, even though we want to try to shift away from telling students what to do. If you're in a sticking point where their metacognitive skills are not really there yet, you can tell them, but make sure that telling is wrapped in with coaching goals. You are specifically and intently making the shift to the coaching and open ended phase. You're not telling them to just tell them, you're telling them with a goal and a shift in mind. So I hope that clears things up for some people. But again, if you are still stuck or you have a group of particular students that you're like, "I don't really know where this is, how this is going to go," definitely reach out. And remember, if they're telling you they don't know or they give you something that's not feasible, it's not that they don't care. It's not that, they're unaware of what's happening. It's their metacognitive skills are just at a weaker point right now, and we want to help them grow them. So now, how can we incorporate this into our daily classroom routines? So, not everybody has to do this, but I do recommend that if you are really going to bring metacognition into your classroom, that you do a quick lesson, just to bring awareness to it. You might want to do the strengths and challenges lesson, because, like I said, metacognition is so rooted in that, but also you can do that really with any grade level. If you're in the lower grades, like K1, 2, you might have the conversation instead of strengths and challenges. What are some things that you feel like you're really good at, and what are some things that can be more challenging or more difficult for you? So I love springboarding that because, again, you can do it and modify it to fit any grade level. You also too, you can have the conversation even with the little ones. Metacognition is thinking about thinking. We're strengthening our brains, we're growing our brains, we're strengthening our own thinking skills so that we can be, as successful as we want to be. Those conversations about success and strengthening our brains, those can happen at any grade level. Set expectations before the lesson starts. Even in the younger grades, you can do this all the way up through 12th grade. Set expectations. What are our expected jobs today? What do we hope to get out of the lesson today? What are their tasks going to be that they can come back to and check off that list at the end? Warm ups or metacognitive motivators. I'm going to show you a couple of those in just a minute. Weave that questioning, throughout the lesson. What do you think you need? How do you think that might work? Where do you think that you can sit? What tools do you think you need? How do you think this connects to your own life? Your check-ins and your reflection, 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 reflection. Super important. So, examples in reading are, and if you were a part of the workshop, you saw these. If not, you can definitely reach out and I could go a little bit more in depth. But examples in reading, those open word sorts, giving students, groups of words and having them think, how do these words connect? What kind of groups can I make based on these words? What do they have in common? What's different? Are any words outliers? Get them thinking about their thinking instead of just giving them words and saying half are going to go in this column and half are going to go in this column. Having that thinking, what kind of groups can I make? Where's the commonality between these words? Describing an object, giving them an object, thinking about its function, the category it belongs in, metaphors, similes, sentences, multiple meanings. These are great kickoffs for the beginnings of reading lessons, whether it's passages or books, because it gets the student, again, way back in this presentation, we talked about getting the student motivated and involved so that they could be critical thinkers. Having these lessons done before a reading task gets their brain and primes it and gets it invested in what they're about to read. So, especially if it's open word sorts, how they're grouping words together, you now have them thinking about words and thinking about the meanings of words and thinking about the connections so that they're more invested to critically think about the book they're about to read. The describing an object, you're now connecting them because you do want to pick an object that is related to the reading they're about to do. They're now so invested, their brain is now so ready to be a part of what they're about to read. So I always recommend doing these, especially you could do them whole class, you could do them in guided reading, but great metacognitive motivators. Rapid naming, giving students a topic and having them list as many words as possible that connect to that topic, or putting a topic on the board with the words already listed, having the students toss a ball and rapidly name them. After 2 rounds, you then erase the words, say the topic, and toss the ball again, having students name all the words from memory. So I did this a lot especially when I was a 6th grade teacher, but I still do it now, even when I'm teaching executive functioning skills. I'll put a topic on the board. So when I was in 6th grade, I might have put Mesopotamia or cells, now as, working with students on executive functioning, I might put metacognition or cognitive flexibility, and I have students name as many words as they can think of when they hear that topic. That shows me what they're connecting to and what they're not connecting to, and it gets their brains in gear. Oh, I heard about cells. What do I know about cells? They're thinking about their own thinking. It increases their awareness. They're becoming aware of their awareness. How much do I know about this topic? And then what I'll do is I'll have students say the words, do a ball toss, a beanbag toss, say the words that are all on the board, and then erase them. Now, okay, you're hearing Mesopotamia, cells, cognitive flexibility. What words pop into your mind? So it connects them more, primes their brain to think about what they know, and gets them more invested in a lesson. This is a great end of lesson activity as well, in terms of studying, because I always say to students, if you're talking about Mesopotamia and you put 7 words on the board, but there were really, 12, 13, 14 words or ideas you should have, that you might have some more studying to do. So this is a really great end of unit activity. So this is the example, with fractions, how you can do it in math. So if I put fractions on the board, I might place all these words up there: numerator, denominator, parts, whole, simplify, divide, factors, multiples, GCF, LCM, have students toss a ball and say them and then erase them. Okay, fractions, and see if they could name all of these words underneath, because they want to know, okay, I'm taking a fractions test. These are the concepts I want to study, or the concepts that I want to have on my brain, or the concepts that I want to focus on when I'm taking this quiz or this test. Okay. Another example, we're going to math. What do I need? That questioning. This is the questioning we want them to be saying on their own. We may coach them in the beginning, but eventually the goal is to get them to the point where they're asking themselves these questions. Where's the list of materials? What do I usually grab for math? What tools help support me? Do I need a fidget? Am I listening or actively working? That's a big one too. We don't want students just grabbing, fidgets and toys if they don't really need them. Do I really need them? Is math an area that tends to be difficult for me to sustain my attention or actively actively listen? Am I actively working right now? Are my hands busy? So I might not need a fidget if my hands are busy. These are the questions that we may ask as coaches to get that metacognitive thinking going, but we eventually want students to think this way for themselves. Okay, these are just some resources that I use to help support this presentation, that helped me grow as an educator, and that helped support a lot of the information in this presentation. Again, if you have any questions or you have any comments and you want to know, definitely feel free to reach out. But I hope that this gave you a lot of information. I hope that this is laying a really nice foundation for the executive functioning instruction in your classroom. And I'm excited to do more together. Have a good day.